Hello, and welcome back to Invitation to Puzzles, the series where we try and get you into all sorts of logic puzzles. Today we have a pentominoes puzzle prepared by Tyrgannus, who we greatly appreciate. Tyrgannus is one of the Gap setters, Gap having been featured many times on this channel before and will be featured, I'm sure, many more. But Tyrgannus prepared this especially for this series, so we appreciate that. And this is an intro to Pentominous. So there's a link in the description for you to try the puzzle yourself. And I'll explain the rules. And so the rules of Pentominous are slightly awkward when you first learn them. And I hesitated a bit about whether to include a Pentominous puzzle or not. But these names that show up for these pentominoes show up often enough that I think it's worth it. So what is a pentomino? A pentomino is a 5-cell shape like this one that I have just drawn here. And there's lots of different shapes that you can make. So I could make that, or I could make this, or I could make this. In fact, there are 12 essentially different ways that you can make a pentomino. Pent just meaning 5, so that's why it's 5 for all of them. There are 12 different ways up to rotation reflection that you could do this. If you've played the game Blockus, then you've seen the 12 pentominoes. And now the thing about the pentominoes to know is that they have names. And each of their names is a letter that they kind of sort of resemble. So, for example, this is a Z. That's not too much of a stretch. This is a T. Of course, it's on its side, but it's believable. This is a P. It's backwards, but what can you do? This takes a little bit, though, especially because some of them are a lot of a stretch. So, for example, this is an N, and it doesn't look a lot like an N. And this is a Y, and it looks maybe a medium amount like a Y. Anyway, we have provided on screen for you an image that shows you all 12 pentominoes and what it is that they look like. And that's important because the way a pentominoes puzzle works is that you're given a grid that you have to divide entirely into pentominoes. In this case, it's a 10 by 10 grid, I think. 10 by 10 grid. So that's 100 squares. That's 20 pentominoes. So we have to divide this into 20 pentominoes. And 2 pentominoes that have the same letter or the same shape can't touch orthogonally. So I can never put, say, this next to this, because that would be an L touching an L, as you can see from the guide, and you're not allowed to have an L touching an L orthogonally, which they do across this edge. Okay. Now, the clues are each letters of the pentomino alphabet, if you will. And they tell you what shape that cell is in. A shape can contain any number of letters, so you can have 2 X's in the same X, for example, or you could have no W's in a W. It's totally fine. You could have 1, 2, 0, any number. So the only constraint is you have to make sure that whatever you do, this ends up in a T, this ends up in an X, and so on. All right. Tyrgannus warned that this was maybe of slightly medium-ish difficulty, so we'll see how that goes. I have medium experience with pentominoes, so hopefully it will go well. But this is something you'll see in a lot of different logic puzzles. You'll see these pentominoes and their names popping up. So I wanted to at least do one. Maybe we'll do some others later. We'll see. All right, but go ahead and have a go. There's a link in the description. And let's get started trying to figure out where these pentominoes go. All right, so let's start with the X, because the X against a border, there's actually only one way that I can see to make it work, which is to do, well, exactly that. I don't think anything else I do is going to work. Basically, because the center square, if you look at it, the center square of the x, I could never put that against a border. And if I can't put that against a border, well, then I have to put it one away from the border. And now that just tells me exactly where it has to be in order for the x to work. Okay. Now, a very helpful tool here is this dash tool. And what the dash tool does is it lets you denote, I don't know what shape this pentomino is, but I know these two are in the same pentomino, because remember, every cell needs to end up in a pentomino that's all contiguous. And so this cell, it's going to join that cell, and this cell is going to join that cell. Okay. Here it's even a little better, actually, because I can't have this join the W, because if this pentomino, that admittedly only has 2 cells at the moment, but it's got dreams, if this pentomino were to try and join the W, well, now it's not a W, because W doesn't have 3 cells in a row like that. And so this comes down like that, and we get to put this piece here. That W piece goes over there. Oops. Okay, so we've got at least that much going on. This eyes are always very restricted because basically you can only put them vertically or horizontally, and quite often one of those is absurd. So in this case, horizontally is the one that is absurd, because I would need to somehow fit 5 cells in these 3. So I at least know that it goes vertically, which means there's a border here. But I have to fit, therefore, an eye in these, in fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cells. And that means I need to go basically either up 1 and hang out at the top, or down 1 and hang out at the bottom. Those are really my only options. And in all instances, all of this ends up being part of the eye. It won't let me slash things with clues, which is a little bit weird. I don't remember that from previous times I've done these, but anyway, that does tell me something useful, though, because now basically all 4 of these cells are part of the eye. And so this budding ambitious pentomino now, it has to come down through here. Stop it. Oops. It has to come down through here, owing to the fact that it can get at most 1 cell over here. And regardless of what that cell is, regardless of whether it gets that cell or not, it's still not at 5. And in fact, even with these 3 cells, whether it takes that cell or not, it's not at 5. So it has to grow and take yet 1 more cell. So all 4 of these are part of a pentomino. That pentomino can't join the T. And the reason for that is because then it wouldn't be a T, it would be an L. However, and this is a really important thing you'll see in a lot of pentomino puzzles, this pentomino now definitely touches a T, because the clue tells you it does. And so it cannot, no matter what it does, end up being a T. Which it would if it took this, right? If it took this cell, it would be a T. So it can't take that cell. And so instead, its last cell is this one, which makes it into a U. And now this I over here becomes a happy I. Okay, we've got a T here. We've got a U here. What are we doing with these assorted creatures? Okay. Weirdly, there's not really a nice way to denote this, but this T always takes this cell regardless of which way it goes. I guess I can denote that by writing a T in there. Let's see, because the 2 basic... I didn't really want to do that. The two basic ways this T could look are it can either be a horizontal. I don't even know whether to call this a horizontal T or a vertical T. It could be normal T shape, or it could be slanty T shape. Oh, or sorry, it could be up. Sorry, this isn't even true. Sorry, my deduction there wasn't true because there's also the possibility that this is an upside down T running along like that. So apologies, I said an untrue thing, as happens around here sometimes. Okay. So a good question sometimes to ask is it possible that this pentomino doesn't take this cell? And I don't think it is possible. Well, actually, let's do it this way first. I think this is the easier way. Is it possible that this pentomino doesn't take this cell? And the answer is no, because of what happens if the pentomino doesn't take this cell. It obligates that this pentomino comes out this way, and then it can't come here because then it would be a W, which again would touch a W. So it would have to come out like this. If this pentomino doesn't take this cell, the only option is that it does that. But now my W has to take these 3 cells in a row, and the problem with W is W doesn't have 3 cells in a row. Okay, and so therefore things get very forced very quickly if this pentomino doesn't take this cell, and they break, in fact. So it goes here. Okay. Helpfully now, this is not ever taking the Z, because if it does take the Z, then it's not a Z in shape. So we can sort of extend the Z there. I guess this client would prefer I do this. Okay. I know that this shape doesn't take this cell because then it would be a Z, again, touching a Z, which would be highly regrettable. So we don't want to do that. Okay. Now what are we doing? Being an L. So this is an L or an F. Oh, I see. Okay, sorry. This is maybe easier. What happens if this W doesn't take this cell? Then the W is forced to W like that. And the problem with this Wing like that is it makes this cell into an L that's actually an N, not an L. So this W has to take this cell, which actually tells me that this is an L. And then that forces the Z shape, which then forces the T shape. Oops. Like that. Okay, good. Now, this L can never take that cell because that cell touches another L. And so this L has to do L things. Either L things basically this way or that way. I guess there's a bunch of options. Okay, well, I know the W doesn't take that cell. And I know the W doesn't take that cell, because if the W took that cell, I couldn't continue it without going off the border. And if the W took this cell, W just doesn't have 3 cells in a row. So I can do this, and then I can sort of finish the W. So that is a plus. So I know this goes over here. Now, an interesting thing happens back in this corner that we've cut the world into. which is that I claim basically now we've got these 5 cells locked off. If I don't do this, something horrible happens. So if I don't disconnect these 2 cells, well, then this cell and that cell are both going to be forced to join into this mega pentomino. And I call it a mega pentomino because it's not a pentomino at all. It's a hexomino at least. And that doesn't work. So basically, you always know that if you have any collection of pentominoes, it's going to have a multiple of 5 size. And so in particular, if I connect these, I force myself to have a pentomino that's not 5 in size. That doesn't work. So I have to actually disconnect those, which then makes that join the n, although I can't show that to you. And these 2 join like that, because this has to grow and it has no real choice beyond that. So my n, I guess, is either going to look like that, which doesn't look great, or it's going to look like that. Okay, well, this X can't possibly take that cell, so let's start there. This X is never taking this cell, because if it did, then we know what it would look like, and the thing it would do would make this L impossible. Oh, maybe that's not even true. Sorry, maybe that's not true. Maybe it's possible that the L would look like that under the... I mean, I guess it's not if you consider the F, but it looked plausible. Okay. So I guess I know, regardless of which way this n goes, that both of these are going to end up being part of the n. I think it's just a question of, does the n come out here or there is the real question. So there's going to be a border there. There's going to be a border here. Well, now the X definitely doesn't take this cell. And now the X, in fact, is forced, I think, to look like this, because I can't sort of, if I went down from this, I'd be forcing this to be an X that would overlap the L in a way that we are not allowed to do. Okay, so now I know that that cell is not part of the N. This cell right here, because of the 2. Basically, I've sort of sketched for you or tried the 2 possible universes of the N. This is not in any of them. But this needs to get to 5 cells. It could maybe take that cell, but whatever it does to get to 5 cells, it needs to go through the L, which means this thing is L-shaped. So, now, though, this cell can't be part of the L, because if this cell is part of the L, then the L looks like this. And you can see the problem, which is that I now have the worst kind of pentomino, a monomino, the most shameful of all ominoes. So this L absolutely can't go down any further. But now, again, the L is obligated to take this cell. And so this L, in fact, does that. And it's got to be L-shaped, so it's that, which makes that the N. Okay. We again have sort of a 5-cell piece here that's only connected to the rest of the world through this cell. And so these 4 plus that one need to be a single pentomino, because all of these, here's a different way to say the same thing I said before, all of these cells, if you think about what happens to their pentomino as it grows, all of them must grow to connect to this one cell. And so if all of them must grow to connect to that one cell, well, that's 5 cells right there. That is my pentomino, so it's a P. Okay, so these are now each part of my F. Now F is the worst pentomino. I think everyone would agree. And so there's a couple of different ways it could look now. Now, I will say that every time I think I have ruled out every way an F could possibly look, it turns out that I'm wrong in a pentomino puzzle. It is a recurring theme, but I'll do my very best to do this rigorously here. So this F is always taking that. Oh, not that. Sorry. Back up. This F is always taking this cell. If you think about it, it either comes here and then there, or here and then there. So that's always part of the F. And that's pretty helpful for thinking about what the L is going to do, because now the L needs to get out of this little 4x4. And it's only going to do that by going through those 2 cells in order to get to enough cells. But now the L has to do L things. Namely, that has to be part of the L, or it's not L-shaped. And so then the L, in fact, in order to be L-shaped, has to look like that. And now we know what our F looks like. Okay, and now this cell is part of the P. And if you think about it, a P is a square with a little bitty bit tapped out to it. And so this is part of the square. So that's always part of the P, no matter what you do. There's no getting around that. This F can't go under the P, because there's just no shape in the F. It could go 1 under the P, sorry, but it can't go sort of further than that. In fact, basically, this F has to have 3 cells in a row with a cell to the left and a cell to the right, or a cell above and a cell below, if you want to think about it this way. That's sort of the spine of the F, if you will. These 3 cells in a row, where are those 3 cells in a row going? Given that I need something either both above and below them if it's horizontal, and left and right of it if it's vertical. Well, nothing horizontal through here works. Nothing horizontal through here works, and I can't get over there, so it's got to be vertical, but then that tells me it only works like that. And now my only cell I can take to the left is that, and my cell to the right is that. And so we end up with that whole rigmarole. And now the P is done, because now the P takes those cells. And now the Y has to take that cell. If it doesn't take this cell, it's not going to end up Y-shaped. Oops. So we're going to drag the Y over there. And if it doesn't take this cell, it's not going to end up Y-shaped. And it can't take that cell. And it can't take that cell and end up Y-shaped either. And if the Y takes this cell, we create the monomino of shame again. And so instead, we have to create that Y. Basically, that one is forced by that. Okay, so this cell is part of our last... Well, we've got 2 ominoes left. We've got this one and the U, and they're not the same because there's no way I could connect this and make it a U. In fact, if you think about the U lives in a 2x3 rectangle is how I think about it. So it's important to sort of identify what the distinguishing features, I suppose, of each thing are. So for like P, it's this 2x2. For F, it's the thing I called the spine. For U, it's this sort of 2x3 block that it lives in. And we now can't have it occupy this 2x3 block. Because if we did, it would definitely overlap this pentomino. So now it occupies this 2x3 block. And if you think through the different ways that it could occupy that 2x3 block, well, there's 2 of them, except one of them results in our not friend, the shame omino again. Oops. the one cell omino. So that's not what happens. And so instead, it's that. And there we go with our U and our last F. I hope you enjoyed that. I know that it takes a bit to sort of get used to the letter name, so I'm hoping this chart here is helpful to help you learn the names of the pentominoes, and I hope you had fun with this puzzle. I do really like these. They do tend to show up a lot in hybrids especially, so they tend to be blended with other types of pencil puzzles, so you will see these if you hang out in the pencil puzzle community long enough. All right, though, that is going to be all for today's episode. Do please leave a comment below. Let me know what you learned in today's video. Let me know how you got on with the puzzle. Do give this channel a subscription if you have not yet. Greatly appreciated. Give the video a thumbs up while you're at it. Do all the things to make me as a YouTuber happy by making the algorithm happy with me. And that will get you more puzzle videos, more game videos, let's plays, streams, all the other stuff that we do around here at Zeta Math Does Puzzles. So I hope you have a good day. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.